it would be really important, I'd imagine, for your sources to be able to have some assured anonymity, to be able to get some leads and to get whispers of what's actually going on. How do you maintain that? How do you build that?
Well, you just don't tell anyone who told you what. I mean, you know, it's a vault.
Yeah.
Government sources, you know, the opposition sources. Yeah, you know, there's journalistic tricks of the trade, but you know, one of the ethics of journalism is that you protect your sources.
Yes.
And that's, you know, relevant in politics as it is with any other form of journalism. And if people know they can trust you, well, and don't forget, you know, they're playing games as well. They will come, you know, and tell you something off the record, knowing that will push you or hoping that will push you in a certain direction to further their political goals, political, you know, agenda. So you've got to be aware of all those sorts of things too. There's snakes and ladders, and you know, it's good fun.
Yeah. How are you finding technology, particularly stuff like social media, as more politicians start to adopt it and use it? Some not so good, some better than others. Are you finding that's beneficial to you getting stories?
Don't know about to getting stories. Certainly to getting responses, it's good. For example, on Twitter.
Yeah.
I love Twitter. I'm not obsessive about it, you know, twittering from press conferences necessarily to get information out there, because I've got, you know, 1,000 followers, whereas I've got 350,000 people watching what I do on the television at night. So, you know, from that perspective, it's good to annoy the shit out of politicians. For example, the other day I put something on Twitter relating to the Premier.
Yes.
I hadn't been able to find something on a website that she said was there.
Yeah.
2 seconds later, the link to the website was emailed to me, and Premier's press secretary rang me and said, "Now, can you put on Twitter that you found it?" So, you know, they're watching it.
Yeah.
They're watching what you're doing.
Yes.
And from that perspective, you know, you can have a bit of fun with it.
Yep. Which you do.
Absolutely, and it's good fun. I don't, you know, I don't see it as being as pivotal here as, for example, Canberra, when you've got, you know, leadership stuff happening down there. You've got people who are putting stuff on Twitter or email or texting journos from inside the party room, because we're just a smaller goldfish bowl here. Yeah. But I enjoy it. I think it's the way of the future. I think it is the way things are going. I can remember when I first started using Twitter during the 2009 election. Yep. You know, people in my office said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And now, you know, there's a whole bunch of journos on it. The 7 News Brisbane has its own Twitter site, its own Facebook site. Yep. So, you know, when I first started in journalism and I walked into the office at the Rockhampton Morning Bulletin 21 years ago and saw a telex machine, I said, "Oh shit, I have arrived. This is the bee's knees." And now, you know, getting emails on a telephone. I mean, it has changed so much in the last little while. It's fun to be part of that and to be able to utilise that, and I'm real keen. I mean, I've got little kids who can do stuff on computers that I can't do, so it's important for me as a dad as well to stay across the technology so I can monitor them and participate in what they're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there, in your opinion, politicians that play the social media game better than others?
From what I've seen, most of them just use it to promote themselves, which is, you know,
to be expected, I guess.
To be expected, yeah. I don't think any of them. I don't think there's anything sort of malicious in what they do or say, but it's mainly just to promote themselves. Yeah. They're politicians.
Yeah, they all want to get voted in next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned before with the news reading thing and you're connecting in that way and those opportunities. It is cutthroat, you know. The next person to read the news may be the person that does it for the next 10 years. Given that, is there a succession planning, I guess, process in place within Seven? Like, are you given the opportunity to blood a new cadet and give them some experience?
You'd have to ask the news director that. That's way above my head.
No, that's fair. No, that's a good look. I guess ultimately, Patrick, we get to consume the output of your work on a nightly basis, and for those that are either watching Seven News religiously, or those tragics like myself that watch all of the news religiously, it's always good to see that point of comparison, to be able to recognise, okay, this is a story filed by Patrick versus Spencer versus Kathy.
The sign off at the end is the giveaway.
Yes, and the deep voiceover, particularly for Kathy's to yours.
Yes.
Look, I would offer that people watch 7 News, and yes, you're right, there is absolutely that challenge.
A lot of them watch 7 News.
There is a large amount.
More than watch 9 News. But we have that discussion on Twitter with monotonous regularity.
Absolutely, backwards and forwards. But look, a lot of people watch, and I think they prefer at this point 7 News because there's some familiar faces, there's some opportunity to connect with those that they know. Do you find that familiarity is a bit of a curse sometimes when you're out dropping the kids at school or out shopping?
No.
No one knows you?
There's no. Well, they might know me. They don't. Occasionally, people say good day, and you know, most of the people at school know you. But you know, it's just.
You're safe so far?
I don't have the paparazzi chasing me around in any way, shape, or form.
Not yet.
Well, you know, and you know, that's, to me anyway, that's not what it's all about. It's about, you know, telling a story as effectively as you can to connect with an audience, and delivering them the facts in an easily digestible way so that they can, you know, understand what's happening to them. Because let's face it, I mean, the politicians that I chase around make the laws that affect people's lives.
Yes.
So you've got to be able to, you know, tell the story in a way that people will understand and understand how it impacts on their lives. So, you know, being, you know, for want of a better expression, being famous and recognised isn't what it's about.
No, and I appreciate that. I've got 2 final questions. One's a curly one, one's a pretty easy one.
Tell me there was no curly one.
Oh no, well, this is
You lied to me.
a surprise.
I trusted you.
I've just thought about it. Given the challenge between 7 and 9 predominantly for people's news eyes at 6 o'clock, in your opinion, what, because for the 350,000 that do watch 7 News, there's
with monotonous regularity, you meant to say.
There's any number of people between conservatively 200 to 350 watching other networks. Why do you think people don't watch 7 News?
Don't watch it?
Yeah.
Because...
Channel change is broken?
Yeah. Why don't people watch Channel News?
Because ultimately the thing that draws out of that is how would you try and build 7 so that it gains a larger share of that audience?
If I could come at it this way, though, I think one of the main reasons Channel 7, or people watch Channel 7, is because there isn't a whole lot of flowery crap. You know, the introductions are 2 parts, and both lines of the introduction that the newsreader read has facts in them.
Yep.
That goes into a story that is told well and succinctly. You know, there's no fat in the story. There's nothing unnecessary there. There's a lot of senior, experienced people at Channel 7 who know how to write. I'm sure you've heard the expression before. They write to the pictures.
Yes.
And we've got a whole bunch of camos who are just so enthusiastic about getting great pictures.
Yeah.
So I think that's why people do watch Channel 7. I think if we knew why they weren't, specifically, we'd address that. We'd have a whole lot more people watching Channel 7. But you know, the ratings and you know why people are watching or not watching is a dilemma that confronts people way above me on an hourly basis.
That's right.
So you know, I think we've got a really strong product.
Yep.
That people know when they watch it. It's the facts, Jack, and that's what it comes down to.
And no question, the ratings reflect that, and that's all we have to really be able to measure and guide our assumptions on that. The easy last question. Given the technology changes you've seen in 21 years as a journalist, let's just crystal ball for 5. What do you see happening as far as either the change in the news cycle or the technology that's used, or those kinds of things, the way that you have to deliver a story? What can you see coming, or what are you doing now that you weren't, you know, that's changed obviously in the last couple of years?
I reckon the next thing we see will be people, you know, as more computers get connected to big screen TVs, there'll be no 6 o'clock news, there'll be no 5 o'clock news, there just will be the news. So when you get home from work, and let's face it, we've all got busy lives, and how many people can make the time to get home at 6 o'clock and watch the news? So when you get home at
350,000 of them apparently.
When you get home at 6:35 and you have your dinner and you put your kids to bed, and at 7:02 you want to sit down in front of the television and watch some news, you will get on the website and you will say, I want the political story, the national political story, the state political story, the weather story, and you will dictate what news you want to see, and you will sit down and you can watch it. And that's the way it'll go. I think there will be, I mean, when I was living in the UK, the most popular news bulletin was the 9 o'clock news bulletin, the late evening news, because it's when people were home and that's when they first sat down to relax and watch the news. I think the days, so it'll be an amalgam of, you know, what Sky does at the moment with its rolling coverage and what happens at 6 o'clock. So you'll have people, for example, Rod and Kay, sitting in a studio reading news, reading introductions to news stories that people will be able to call up on demand. So on-demand news, and as that is streamlined, and I think that's the way of the future. I think that's the next thing we see. So instead of me, you know, waking up in the morning, reading the papers, reading what's online, talking to the Premier's office, talking to the opposition leader's office, talking to MPs, deciding what the story of the day is, going out, filming it, writing it, editing it in time for the 6 o'clock news, I will do that. So I'll put it, as soon as I finish one story, I'll move on to the next, and I'll move on to the next. And every journo will be in that position. Excellent. As opposed to just doing one story. As one of my predecessors was wont to say, one story per day, perhaps. I think it'll be a lot more than that.
And that's entirely fair. Thank you very much, Patrick Condren.